Drug testing is becoming more and more popular in the United States and in most Western countries. Drug tests may be used during the employment application process, while employed, by probation officers in the criminal justice environment, for alcohol and drug evaluations, and may even be required by courts in divorce or child custody cases. If you're facing the prospect of a drug screen and perhaps practice moderate use of marijuana for medicinal, motivational, mental health, or general merriment, you probably have a few misgivings. Let's take a really deep dive into drug screening for marijuana. Welcome, my name is David Jolly. Drug screens for marijuana usually measure THC or its metabolite, carboxy THC. Depending on the specific testing method, traces of THC can be found hours or even days after consumption or ingestion, and carboxy THC can be detected days, weeks, or even months after use. Testing can take many forms, but the most common way of testing is the urine test, also called the urinalysis or UA. Other types of drug tests include blood tests, saliva tests, sweat tests, and even hair follicle tests. A drug test for any drug is designed to analyze a biological sample to determine how much of a drug is in the individual's body. Marijuana contains hundreds of chemicals, but there are only two that drug screens are looking for. The first is THC, and this is the chemical or psychoactive component that affects mood, perception, and behavior. The second chemical drug testing is looking for is carboxy THC, which is a metabolite of marijuana and is produced when the liver breaks down the THC. Drug testing may be required for a number of reasons, including screening prior to employment, testing for those in security or military positions, safety precaution for those operating heavy machinery or vehicles, testing as a deterrent to prevent drug use in schools, companies, and government departments. Routine testing is part of a drug program in divorce cases or child custody matters, following an arrest for a crime when drug impairment is suspected, such as driving under the influence, by probation departments to confirm compliance with court orders, for alcohol drug evaluations as ordered by a court during a criminal case. If you have consumed marijuana recently and are facing the prospect of a drug test, you may wonder how long will you have to wait in order to test negative. Like most things, there is no easy answer. The length of time THC or carboxy THC stays in the body is different from person to person. It's very important you do your best to time the drug test with the complete elimination of marijuana from your body. Factors that may affect rapid elimination of marijuana from your body include body fat, because THC binds to the fat, and the more fat in the body, the longer the THC will stay in your system. The frequency with which you consume cannabis, the more you use, the longer evidence will remain in your body. The strength of the cannabis consumed, and the amount of cannabis that is consumed. As mentioned, THC loves fat and is fat soluble, which means it attaches itself onto the body's fat tissue. Those with higher body fat may store and hold carboxy THC for a longer period compared to a person who is thin and a lower percentage of body fat. Marijuana detection may also depend on whether the person is an occasional user or a frequent user of cannabis. Frequent marijuana users tend to retain THC metabolites in their fat tissues for a much longer period than do occasional users. The elimination of carboxy THC, the metabolite of THC, and the evidence that confirms prior use of marijuana is critical to understand before facing a drug test. You want to be certain that there is no evidence remaining if you wish to pass the drug screen. Carboxy THC has an elimination half-life of several days or even weeks for heavy users. The half-life of a drug is when the amount of the drug in the body is reduced by 50%. Different studies suggest, or guess, the average half-life of carboxy THC is about 4 days. But please don't use this number as accurate, as it is dependent on too many factors that are often not considered by researchers. Drug testing is big business. The drug testing industry is developing more accurate tests every year, and their advancements are being encouraged and funded by both big business and government. Let's have a look at the types of tests commonly used to detect marijuana. There are a number of products and practices used to detect marijuana consumption. The first is the urinalysis test. Urinalysis testing is the most common way of screening for cannabis consumption. Urine samples are easy to collect and are relatively non-invasive. The samples are then sent to the laboratory to be tested once they are collected. UA tests detect carboxy THC, which is the metabolite of THC. Remember, carboxy THC will remain in your system days or weeks after marijuana use, and a urinalysis test will detect these substances if they are in your system. According to the National Drug Court Institute, occasional or first-time cannabis consumers will probably test positive for 1 to 3 days. Infrequent users may test positive for at least 4 days, and frequent marijuana users can expect to test positive for 10 days after use. It's important to use these findings as only a rough guide, as there are studies confirming positive findings with UA testing more than a month after use, and in one extreme case, more than 2 months after use. Blood tests for drugs are often used during DUI or criminal investigations when an officer suspects the driver has used marijuana or another drug, or during a criminal investigation following a fatal traffic accident when drugs might be suspected. Unlike urinalysis testing, blood tests measure active THC and carboxy THC, while UA testing only tests for carboxy THC. Because blood testing is invasive with the use of a needle, it is used far less frequently in drug testing. In states with strict driving under the influence of marijuana laws, blood draws may be requested by law enforcement officers or required by the very quick granting of a search warrant for blood. Hair testing is proven to be an accurate form of testing for marijuana. Hair testing also provides the longest period of detection, up to 3 months, following cannabis use. Following cannabis consumption, the THC reaches the hair follicles through the blood vessels in the scalp and is then deposited on the hair shafts. Once there, THC will remain on the hair as it grows. During the testing process, only a small sample of hair is required. Frequent cannabis users are more likely to test positive during this type of testing due to the buildup of THC in their hair over time. There are some concerning studies that also found that secondhand smoke can leave evidence of THC residue in the hair. While hair testing is considered a more reliable form of testing, it's also far more expensive than urine or blood testing and is therefore done far less frequently. Saliva testing is one of the newer methods of testing for marijuana, and frankly, I have never seen it at all used in my line of work. There are certain advantages in that it is less expensive and more convenient than other tests that are usually employed. Studies have found that saliva samples produce positive results within hours of marijuana use, which is far faster than urine samples. Sweat testing is a relatively non-invasive way to monitor drug exposure using a patch that is applied to the skin for up to 2 weeks. This type of test can be used in drug treatment, in employment programs, or in the criminal justice system. Sweat testing has some serious limitations due to the fact that the amount of perspiration can be very different between people, and the accuracy of THC measurement may be affected by environmental contamination, temperature, and the level of physical exertion. At-home drug tests are easy to find and can be purchased in both drugstores and online, and they're also relatively affordable. While these tests are not as accurate as the other tests mentioned, they may give an indication of where the marijuana remains in your body. But be cautious with these tests, as studies have proven that false negative tests have occurred when the at-home test has either passed its expiration date or the test chemicals are not working correctly. Anecdotally, many of my clients have purchased 2 different types of marijuana home drug tests and test twice to ensure greater reliability. Knowing the basics about cannabis and the type of testing is one thing, but you may be most concerned about eliminating THC quickly from your system prior to a drug test. There are some predictable and guaranteed methods that will work, and others that might not work. Removing evidence of cannabis consumption is absolutely necessary if you're facing a drug screen. There are guaranteed ways to remove such evidence, and I always recommend practicing religiously these methods that do produce results. Such methods, as boring as they are, include time, abstinence, water, and a good diet. Of course, there are some other methods that may work and others that are simply old wives' tales. The easiest and only guaranteed way of testing negative is to abstain from using any marijuana products prior to testing. Unfortunately, there is no easy way to determine how long you must remain abstinent, but of course, longer is always better. For infrequent users, you may be okay 3 to 4 days after use, while semi-regular users might need at least 7 to 10 days. For a heavy user, it might be more than 10 days and even up to 60 days. There are just too many variables, such as how often you consume, your body's fat levels, and of course your own chemistry. So, know your limits, adjust accordingly, and add some more time to these calculations. A common practice in flushing out THC literally is to drink copious amounts of water. There are some studies that have determined that drinking large amounts of water prior to a urine test does lower the carboxy THC in the urine and may actually lead to a negative result. There is one problem with this practice that we cannot overlook. Testers will be onto you if you drink so much water that the sample ends up being diluted. These samples will be rejected and a suspicious eye turned in your direction. I have faced dozens of judges who believe a diluted sample is effectively a positive sample. Knowing this, drink lots of water up to the day before the test, but do not drink too much water the day of testing. Exercise may assist in the detox process as it does burn body fat, and that's where THC loves to hide. But be careful with this method, as there is some evidence that sweating out THC could actually result in a spike of THC. So do not exercise with any vigor 1 to 2 days prior to testing. Detoxing the body from marijuana is a common practice for those wanting a cleaner and healthier lifestyle, or to avoid a positive drug test. One of the many ways to detox from marijuana is by practicing proper nutrition. Detoxing from marijuana can be done a number of ways, but a healthy way to speed up the process is by eating and consuming the right food and drink. High fiber foods are a great place to start. High fiber foods would include whole grain breads, so not white bread, whole wheat pasta, brown rice, and whole grain cereals. Antioxidant foods are also good to introduce into your diet. Such foods boost your immune system and do repair damaged cells. Examples of antioxidant-rich foods include very dark chocolates, nuts, all kinds of beans, fruits, vegetables, and certain fish like salmon. Also essential for good health are lean proteins. It's smart to avoid red meat when eliminating marijuana from your body, so avoiding fatty proteins helps. Meats such as chicken, turkey, and ham, as well as eggs and beans, are a good place to assist with the healthy elimination of THC. Needless to say, avoid fast food, fried food, and any food that is high in fat. Finally, it is imperative you remain well hydrated when trying to flush out toxins and marijuana metabolites from your body. Ordinary water is the best choice, and adding lemon or cucumber may give it some taste. Some believe that adding lemon also assists with the elimination of THC. It's important to avoid alcohol and fizzy drinks with lots of sugar. Let's briefly talk about certain fluids that have been considered as beneficial for marijuana detoxing. Cranberry juice is probably the most popular of the detox fluids, besides water. How well it actually works is very much up for debate. In moderation, it probably won't hurt and may increase urination because it is a natural diuretic. There is probably no harm in adding cranberry juice to your detox regimen, but drinking too much may affect the color of your urine and cause some suspicion by testers. But drinking too much can also have some negative side effects. So, needless to say, be careful. Drinking tea is another healthy option that is thought by some to help with the detoxification process. If you choose this option, choose teas with high levels of antioxidants or liver-cleansing teas such as dandelion or milk thistle. Many opt for the simple and traditional green tea. A little apple cider vinegar may have some positive health benefits, but as a way to rid yourself of THC, the jury is still out. If you use apple cider vinegar, use it in extreme moderation and only in accordance with recommended dosages. Like apple cider vinegar, pickle juice is very acidic. Some believe that helps detoxing, but there seems little, if any, evidence to support anecdotal claims. Preparing for a drug test involving the tried and true methods of abstinence, time, proper diet, and hydration is the right approach to a good result. But those who are more desperate or don't have the time necessary may resort to more creative or even risky methods in order to test clean. It is often unwise to deviate from the norm and try to manipulate a drug test. The risks usually far outweigh the rewards. And as an attorney, I would never suggest anyone try and manipulate any test, particularly when dealing with the court system. But the truth is, humans are creative and have attempted all kinds of manners and means to beat the system and save themselves. Delaying a drug test is not a terrible idea if you can manage it. In my line of work, a client might be given a few different dates to report for a UA test for drugs. At times when my client is a little concerned, they should then choose the latest date given. If the tester agrees to the last date or even a date beyond that, then all parties have agreed to it, and there is no manipulation. Sometimes a few extra days or an additional week or two can make all the difference. One of the concerns I have with scientific testing, whether it be for breath in alcohol cases or by blood in other cases, is the margin of error. No test is perfect. The problem with urine testing is we don't really consider this margin of error when we test. So there is a way where you might be able to remove the higher amounts of THC from testing by simply providing a sample in a certain manner. If you're providing a urine sample, try to provide a sample from the middle of your urine stream, not at the beginning or end of the stream. Apparently, most THC metabolites are present in the beginning and at the end of the urine stream. Also, if you can, avoid providing a urine sample in the morning, as this is when the highest number of metabolites are present, evidently. Now, this would not be considered manipulation, as you're still providing a sample from your body in a manner that is not considered in any way unethical or improper. Detoxification is the removal of a toxic substance from the body. In general, it is healthier and safer to allow the carboxy THC to leave the body naturally. But Sometimes the time before a drug test does not allow for the natural way. In such instances, there is yet another option, a detoxification kit. These are kits produced to flush out the marijuana metabolites out of the body and usually come in the form of drinks or pills. It is advised, though, that you be very cautious with these kits as they are not approved by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. There are times when the dilution of a urine sample is accidental. This can and does happen. But the truth is that most diluted samples are, in fact, deliberate. Drug testers, probation officers, judges, and even some employers know this. The presumption with a diluted urine sample is that you're covering up something. A diluted sample happens when you drink a large amount of water prior to a urinalysis test. The idea behind this practice is the dilution increases the chance of obtaining a negative result. But the testing process is far more advanced these days, so it's likely it'll be picked up as a diluted and not a negative result. It's also considered manipulation and would likely require retesting and great suspicion. Yep, there is such a thing. In fact, it was accidentally created way back in 1828 by chemist Friedrich Wöhler. Well, now you can buy the stuff. Not the stuff from chemist Wöhler, but from many other companies online. The kit is made of a mix of water, urea, creatine, pH balance, and/or uric acid. But, and this is really important, the sale of fake urine is illegal in many states, and in some states, it's actually a felony. The other factor worthy of serious consideration is that most UA testing is monitored, so good luck whipping out your fake urine. Just say no. Using someone else's urine instead of your own urine has been attempted for many years. Well, this too is deception and would only work if the test is unsupervised. But many, if not most, tests are now supervised, so this method would likely fail. It's also a really bad idea. There are shampoos that allegedly assist in the faster removal of THC when used in conjunction with other methods of THC removal. Obviously, using a shampoo that allegedly removes toxins from the hair is for hair testing, not other forms of marijuana drug testing. Even Amazon sells these, but they are very expensive. The Macujo, or MAC method, is a 7-step hair cleansing procedure designed to successfully pass drug hair testing. The idea is that the method opens up the hair cuticles and permits the cortex, which is the middle of the hair cuticle, to be flushed free of the THC metabolites. This rather lengthy, expensive, and complicated method advises the use of rubber gloves, shower cap, clean and clear deep cleansing, Heinz vinegar, Tide liquid laundry detergent, old-style aloe toxin-rid shampoo, and Zydot Ultra Clean. This reminds me more of a Breaking Bad episode than a way to actually pass a drug test. It is advised by those in the know that this process be repeated at least 5 times within 3 to 5 days and a few hours before the test. Advocates of this practice believe this process is 90% successful, but works better for thin, light hair and not as well for darker, thicker hair. When I did my research into the validity of this test, I found hundreds of positive reviews and some negative. The problem with this type of research is that it's all anecdotal. So, is there any scientific research or analysis on the Macujo method? Well, sort of. In 2016, there was a paper published entitled Hair Analysis for the Detection of Drug Use. Is there potential for evasion? The research for this published document was a little sparse as they found little by way of peer-reviewed data, not surprisingly, on this subject. The conclusion that this one and only quasi-scientific paper remotely related to the Macujo method came up with was: further research is needed by way of chemical analysis and trial of the adulterant products sold online and their effects, as well as the development of more sophisticated hair testing techniques. The conclusion we can make is, all we have really is anecdotal evidence that the Macujo method works, most of the time. There are many advocates of CERTO and SureGel who claim it is a guaranteed way of passing a drug test for marijuana. CERTO and SureGel are food products using fruit pectin, and according to the manufacturer of CERTO, help simplify your favorite jam and jelly recipes and is an easier alternative to powder varieties. It is basically used to thicken jams and jellies. What the information doesn't say is that CERTO has been used by many to hopefully pass a urinalysis test, and the same is true for SureGel. According to believers, the products are rich in fiber, and this fiber is not fully digested by the body when consumed in greater amounts. This fiber then passes through the stomach, the small intestine, then through the colon, and is ultimately expelled by a bowel movement. The pectin in the product apparently absorbs to bile from the intestines and prevents the THC metabolite, carboxy-THC, from being reabsorbed into the blood. Then the pectin and carboxy-THC is removed through the bowel movement. At least I think I have that right. The process itself involves the mixture of either CERTO or SureGel with a 32-ounce sports drink like Gatorade. The solution is then shaken in the sports drink to the point where it has dissolved and then consumed over the next 15 or so minutes. Believers suggest that doing this the night before is good, before the test that is, before you go to sleep, and then again the following day approximately 2 hours before the test. It's recommended by these same people that the individual consume copious amounts of water the morning of the test prior to the second and final round of CERTO consumption. To top it off, it's recommended the individual take a B2 supplement and a creatine monohydrate supplement. The important question that needs answering is, does it work? I don't know. There are thousands of people who swear by this practice. But if you scour the internet, you'll also find advocates of this practice who believe that it works for them, time after time, and equally many who say that it doesn't. So I guess the question next is, what about science? Well, not surprisingly, science hasn't seemed to have tested whether CERTO or SureGel work for passing drug tests. In fairness, they're probably busy working on COVID, cancer, and Alzheimer's. But the National Association of Drug Court Professionals believes that it does not help those wanting to pass a drug test, although they do not have any science to support their assumption either. All right. First, I don't recommend this method if you're drug testing in a court of law. Why? Well, because I'm a lawyer, and it's clearly manipulating the test, and you're potentially putting yourself in greater danger if the court system finds you out. Also, the amount of fluids you're consuming by drinking all of the fluid recommended prior to testing, including water, increases your chances of providing a diluted sample. Providing a diluted sample does give the appearance to some, like a probation officer or a judge, that you're trying to manipulate the system. CERTO or SureGel, fact or fiction? Well, the debate continues. Some research suggests that the use of zinc can help you pass the pesky marijuana drug test. The problem with some of these studies is that they are several years old, and one study did not even use active marijuana smokers as participants. Another problem is that they are not necessarily relevant to the newer testing products used for marijuana detection. There is still a serious question as to whether zinc will have any positive effect in garnering a negative marijuana test result. Niacin, which is also vitamin B3, is a compound naturally found in the human body that serves the purpose of metabolizing carbohydrates. Niacin pills are commonly used as a dietary supplement for people who are suffering from high cholesterol levels or low niacin levels. And it's also often used to increase the health of skin, hair, and eyes. In the context of drug testing, the niacin flush is a method that is supposed to clear out traces of metabolites quickly. The problem with this theory is that niacin's effectiveness varies from person to person and depends on height, weight, and the metabolism of that person. So, does it work? There does seem to be some data that supports the idea that niacin may hasten the removal of metabolites if taken in the correct amount over the right number of days. But the consensus is that if it does work, it's very unreliable. And I'll tell you right now, don't do it. Niacin can be very hard on your liver and can cause serious health problems. Remember, you must always put your health first. Another method practiced by many in preparation for a drug test is activated charcoal. Research and reviews suggest that activated charcoal binds to the metabolites like carboxy-THC, thus preventing their reabsorption into the bloodstream and ending up and speeding up their elimination. This suggests that charcoal could help you pass a drug test faster. The reality is there seems to be no peer-reviewed scientific research that supports the belief that using activated charcoal will help you pass a drug test for marijuana. Some believe that bentonite clay mixed with a little water and eaten as a paste is an excellent way to remove toxins useful in absorbing THC metabolites. I cannot find any science that supports this, and importantly, medical professionals advise against consuming bentonite clay as it may cause a blockage in your intestines. Further, there are at least 2 brands of bentonite clay supplements that have been found to contain lead. This is one to avoid. There is a laundry list of alternative detox methods many have tried and even recommend to remove proof of marijuana consumption. Such methods include hot and cold showers, dry skin brushing, castor oil packs, vitamin C flush, natural colon cleansing, garlic, tongue scraping, grape tox, the werewolf diet, cryotherapy, Epsom salt baths, baking soda, golden seal, and bleach. And don't ever use bleach because it could kill you. The reality is that some of the suggested detox practices may make you feel good, not the bleach, but there is no evidence that they will actually remove carboxy-THC from your system. Be careful and cautious when preparing for a marijuana drug test. Some methods may not harm you, but some may be more fiction than fact. Manipulating the system in ways that may be dangerous to you or are risky should never be considered. Always consider the risks when contemplating unorthodox approaches to the rapid removal of THC, and never contemplate doing anything that will cause you physical harm or risk employment or your legal status in court. Drug testing is serious, and as such, it's important that all steps be taken to avoid a positive test. Understanding what steps are necessary will assist in a successful outcome. The 2 keys supported both anecdotally and by science that guarantees you pass a marijuana drug test are abstinence and time. That's it. Understandably, it's frustrating to hear if time is not on your side, but this is the simple truth. There are other practices that may assist in removing THC, such as great hydration, exercise, and a healthy diet. Everything else is a little suspect, to be honest. And to wrap up this video, I think it's important to add a couple of important points. If you're in the court system, it is really unwise to try and manipulate a drug test. Things can get really bad in a hurry. And second, some of the methods suggested by those on the internet that involve excessive consumption or ingestion of certain products or use of chemicals can be dangerous. Please don't do anything to harm yourself. For more videos on cannabis and criminal law, please subscribe to this channel.